thought that I'd talk a little about one of my haters. Dun 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 dun. And one of the nice things about not being a huge streamer is oftentimes, regardless if you know it or not, I'm able to see comments on my videos. I can keep up with the chat somewhat, right? If there's 10,000 people watching, it's hard to keep up with the chat, really. But if there's only 100 watching, it's not so bad. So I see a lot of comments that people make on my videos, whether it be the live streams or it be my great editor Black Elk puts out sort of the regular videos that he edits from my live streams. I do get to see a lot of the comments and I enjoy reading them. I even enjoy the ones that are critical. One of the people that comments on almost every one of my videos, and I know he'll be watching this in retrospect, so hi, how you doing? His name is Unholy Raft. That's his name. Now, Unholy Raft, I've offered to have come on and chat, but he must not have the time or the courage to do so. But he oftentimes has many things to say that are critical, and I chuckle reading them. But he outdid himself yesterday, and I thought it would be worth looking at. So first, let me ask is, how many people saw a healthy portion of the live stream I did last evening? I talked to a person who goes by the name Joe Over on X, and he was someone who challenged me on X that he was going to call in and defend the streamer Destiny about an X post I made. Destiny was saying Asmongold is fascist adjacent. I made a post saying, actually, Destiny's the last person that should make this, thing is how the authoritarian things that he's called for. And this guy said, I'll call in and defend Destiny's position. Okay. So he called in. How many people saw that? If you saw that stream last night, just give me a 1. Put a 1 in the chat if you saw that stream last night. Because I'm not going to play the whole video of the stream last night or anything, but we're going to talk a little about that stream just so you could see an idea. I think that it's important. Thanks, Bonley. I think it's important is just like a fun day, an off day here when we're having a call-in show to sort of look at the tactics that people will use. Now, I think that anyone that saw that, so we have some people that saw, I think that anyone who saw that stream last night objectively would have to say that the caller didn't do so well. When you see things like that, or my debate with Fatty, so let me compare some things, right? I thought of the people I've interacted with recently, here's the scale of how poorly they did. I thought that person, Fatty, that I debated, I'm not saying that as an insult, that's what he calls himself. Fatty that I debated last week, I thought he was near the bottom of performance of people I've debated. Not good at all. And then slightly up from there, I would put the guy that I debated last night, this Joe Ever guy. And then I would put that Jola guy somewhere in the middle that I talked to last Wednesday. And then I would put Adam, who I talked to on Jake Rattlesnake show, near the top. Adam's one of my favorite people I've debated in a long time. I would be happy to debate him anytime. Thought it was cordial. We each let each other talk with minimal intervention from the host. He knew what he was talking about. He actually could string together an argument. It was great. I love that. Right. But like, if you watched me debate that Fatty guy or this guy last night, they didn't do so hot. They didn't. So when you see people that are like just gut reaction, like Rob's terrible, he's just the worst, blah, 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 blah. And they're making the arguments like when I'm debating people like Fatty or with this guy last night, you can kind of see sort of the tactic of what's going on. And I love these hate watchers. Like, I wonder if there's like I know this probably isn't the case, but I can't help in my imagination to think that this is the case, that there are people from other people's community that are like tasked with, okay, us Destiny fans, we're going to make sure that we have eyeballs on the people that criticize him. You're going to go and watch Rob's stream every week, and you're going to watch Andrew Wilson stream, and you're going to watch Lecture Fan, and you're going to, right? Like something like that. Is that how you get these hate watchers? I don't know. But so this guy last night, in me debate, he calls in. I thought it would be worth looking at this screen from one of my hate watchers, Unholy Raft, my premier hater. Thank you so much, Unholy Raft. By the way, he's not going to. I have no intentions to ban him or anything like that. I think it's great engagement. I enjoy it. It provides me a great sense of amusement. So let's look at his comment. And the first thing you'll recognize is, look at the length of this comment from this video last night. Amazing. This is absolutely amazing. Look at this. Still going. Woo! Isn't this great? So let's go through some of this, huh? He's going to nail me down. He's nailed me down how bad I did last night. All right, here we go. I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm pleased with this. It's one thing to have fans that donate money to me, fans that say nice things about me, but it's so great that there's some guy out there that's consuming every bit of content I do. And it's like, I'm going to the computer. I'm going to type up. So let's see the great points that Unholy Raft made here. You ready? Thank you so much, Unholy Raft. The content is mucho appreciated. And if you ever want to call in, I know he'll say, I never remember Rob saying to call in. Unholy Raft, here you go. If you ever want to call in, just let me know, man. You're already hitting me up every day on the chat, right? On the comment section of my videos. Let me know. Hey, I'd love to call in and talk to you, Rob. All right, here we go. He says, so much of Rob just confuses me. I figured I'd make a longer post with timestamps to show his idiocy on this one. At 11 minutes, Rob scheduled this debate publicly for Wednesday. I don't know what dimension he lives in because the date of this debate is on a Thursday. Now, this is usually where Rob leaves out his private combos and what goes down in those convos because it will affect his ability to spin a narrative later. Also worth noting, he didn't even stream on Wednesday, LOL. Since Rob says he scheduled it for Wednesday, but Rob never streamed it, this happened on a Thursday, I'm betting that Rob had to reschedule. So he contacted him privately. So Rob rescheduled the debate he set for a date for. Then he jumped on with his audience and accused his opponent of not showing up before the official meeting time even. I will be shocked if going forward, Rob actually makes arguments for why Destiny's for censorship and of right-wing or of fascist right-wingers, because it sounds like he's just hoping no one shows. I almost wonder if Rob even told the guy he wasn't streaming Wednesday, and if the guy just showed up and ran with it. I'm not going to show the post unless someone really wants to. I will contact Joe Ever to ask if he allows me to show the DMs, but I will read this at Wednesday, 11:39 a.m. Joe Ever messaged me and says, hey, my travel date for work was moved up to today, so I will not be able to call in today at 7 p.m. Are you streaming any other day? I would still like to chat if interested. Let me know, and I hope you have a nice day. I respond at 11:45 a.m., 6 minutes later. Sure, tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. Eastern time. That would be Thursday at 7. Thanks. I appreciate you for being flexible. No problem, I say. So this entire conspiracy theory that, oh, well, Rob didn't stream Wednesday and he's withholding the private DMs. And probably what happened was Rob had to reschedule and then he blamed this other dude. That's probably what's going on. When in reality, the exact opposite is the truth. The person cordially asked me, said he had a conflict, asked if we could reschedule for another day. When's the next day I'd be streaming? I told him the next day would be Thursday at 7 p.m. He said, sounds great. When I came on, I was already talking about sort of the modern day debate situation with the schedule of Friday's debate that got all screwed up. And I made the comment, I wouldn't be surprised if this guy no shows because he's supposed to be on at 7 p.m. And I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't happen either. He showed up. I said, wow, I'm glad you're here. I didn't think you would show. There you go. So there's number one to show. Remember, what this is going to do is show my idiocy. That's what we're going to do. Show my idiocy. So there's this whole paragraph, one whole paragraph, absolute nonsense right out of the gate. Okay, moving on. 1745. Rob says he'll look for evidence to prove his claim of what Destiny said. While he does this, he wants to exploit the counterclaim made in rebuttal. Worth noting that even in collegiate debate, following this conversation is an important part. I have no idea what he's trying to say here. Yes, in collegiate debate, oftentimes what happens is the arguments that are made in round get explored. That's what happens. So, for example, oftentimes in collegiate debate, you'll present to your opponents, at least if you're affirmative, what your plan and your arguments are before the debate. But if during the debate something else gets raised, that oftentimes gets explored. It doesn't get ignored, so you can focus on what you thought you were going to talk about. But I'm not quite sure what he's trying to say here, if I'm honest. He says, before we leave this to timestamp pieces of the counterclaim inside the rebuttal, at 22:45, Rob claims that his opponent has no evidence to support his counterclaim. Now, just to be clear, the counterclaim is, this is what's going on here. This guy, I said in my post of Destiny, Destiny's oftentimes called for censorship of people. The guy says, I don't know if I believe that because I've seen you misrepresent people in the past. I've been watching you and I see you misrepresent comments that people make. I say, where? Where have you seen me do that? Now, what Unholy Raft here is trying to say is, I shouldn't say that. I should just accept that. I should just accept, yes, this gentleman said that he's seen me misrepresent people, but Rob, as a collegiate debater, should not say, do you have proof of that? No, instead, Rob should prove his claim first and then later come back to this claim that's being made of him, that he has misrepresented people. Why? If I said, hey, here's why I think that we should have, stronger borders, and he said, well, I've seen you, you're a racist, I wouldn't be allowed to say, what have I said that's racist? Can you prove that? Unholy Raft would say, no, that's bad form. You have to table that. Just accept that he called you a racist until an hour later when you get back to it. So why can't I ask him? He made an accusation about me. He said, I made a claim. I said, Destiny's routinely called for the censorship of people. He says, I don't know if I believe that. I'd like to see proof because I've seen you misrepresent people. I say, how? And the reason it's important to have this conversation about this accusation first is because what's going to happen later in this debate, which is I'm going to prove that Destiny said the things that I'm claiming that he said, and what's my opponent going to say? But that's different. But actually, you're misrepresenting him. That's not what he really meant when he said the exact words that you quoted him as saying. So I'm getting out in front of it. Right? Because his argument's going to be, I can't, even if you provide the receipts, I don't trust you because, and he even says this in this part, he says, well, the problem is when you talk about things Destiny said, maybe Destiny said that in a 3-hour conversation and you're leaving out the other 3 hours. And so if he's allowed to poison the well and say, well, Rob routinely misrepresents people. And so therefore, even if Rob can provide the timestamp, even if he could provide the audio of the exact quote, you shouldn't trust him because Rob's not playing the full 3-hour conversation for you. So why would you believe him? Because he routinely misrepresents people. So again, so far in Unholy Raft's large screed that he has here, criticism 1 was, I must have rescheduled and lied, and I'm too much of a coward to show my conversation to see that. Blatantly not true. And if Unholy Raft wants to make a point of this, then I will call Joe Ever, or I'll get in contact with him and say, excuse me, would you mind if I release the direct message that we had? They're pretty benign. I already talked about it. Would you mind if I release it? And then you could confirm that this was the conversation. And then you think Unholy Raft will go, oh my God, I'm sorry. What an incredible misread. Actually, it turned out that Rob was being generous and he wasn't the one that rescheduled. Of course not. So that was paragraph 1. Paragraph 2 is, well, Rob, instead of talking about his claim, he wants to talk about the, quote, counterclaim. The counterclaim is, I don't believe you, Rob, because you misrepresent people. So he says, Rob claims his opponent has no evidence to support the counterclaim. The counterclaim is that I routinely misrepresent people, that he's seen me. And then he says, which is interesting, that although Rob made the very first claim in the convo, he chose not to provide evidence and instead attacking his opponent for not having evidence of his counterclaim. Well, if you follow along, I'm going to provide evidence eventually. Right after this, opponent even notes that Rob hasn't provided any evidence. Rob does click his keyboard and move his mouse, but he goes right back to arguing. Yes, what I started to do was queue up the video exchanges that I personally heard Destiny referencing me when he talked about censorship. I did not have the timestamps of them. So what I'm going to do, as you'll see later in the debate, is I go through and try to find the 2 interactions I had with Destiny that prove the things that I'm saying that he said. So yes, I was queuing up a clip as I'm telling this person. Now, I thought that it was common knowledge that people had heard Destiny say that he would call for censorship of certain people on the right. So I didn't have these clips ready. But once they were asked for, I started to queue them up to provide them. Again, Unholy Raft's entire argument here is I should have just accepted the claim, the accusation made to me that I misrepresent people. How dare I rebut that? How dare I? You just have to accept that and go forward. 23 minutes. He says, now Rob is hung up on what he perceives as a moving of the goalpost. The guy did clearly say he was adding this to it, but for some reason, Rob won't hear his words and make his own point. I have no idea what he's talking about here. I guess we'll click the timestamp and see.
You are loading the
sorry, I have this muted.
Language that you use to make it sound way worse. So the same way that you just claimed that Destiny has advocated for right-wing social justice or social media personalities to be taken offline, yet you haven't given me a clip of that exact thing yet, first off. Secondly, you're using that loaded language of like, I haven't personally seen this from Destiny, so like you can claim this, but like at the same time, it's probably taken out of context. I would be willing to bet.
Taking out of context is a different argument than I don't like the tone in which you said it.
It can be part of the same argument.
You can say that, but
tonality is part of context.
Do you think that you seem? So this is what he's talking about. So originally, when I asked my opponent how I was misrepresenting people, and I was quoting the exact words that I heard Destiny say. He said that he didn't like the tone, or he didn't like the specific words that I chose. So even if I directly quote Destiny, if I say, I think it's terrible that Destiny unfortunately said writing's the other side of the coin of voting, he would say, oh, well, that's a misframe because you used the word terrible. You used the word unfortunate. So I don't like the way you're framing that. I don't like the tone of the way you're talking about it. And then he says that I'm taking it out of context, which is a different argument, which I address that as well. 24 minutes. His opponent tries to center the crux of the argument beyond the core issues brought forth. When in this minute, they repeat the points made in the above mentioned timestamp. They attempt to center the argument away from the meta argument Rob wants to have, which was a failure clearly, LOL. What was the failure about the meta argument? I was accused, again, Unholy Raph would never accept this. Imagine that I'm having a debate with him and I say, you lie all the time. I've heard you lie repeatedly. And he said, where? Show me one time. And I said, oh, you're clearly trying to recenter the argument. Look at what he's doing. Now he's changing the argument about him lying. You just have to accept the fact that I called you a liar, and you're not allowed to say that that's not true or ask for evidence. If you ask for evidence of that claim, that's clearly you trying to skirt the central issue of this debate. It's laughable. Moving forward, he says 33 minutes going forward, or 30 minutes, 30 seconds. Oh, I'm sorry. Where are we at? 28 minutes. Rob is still trying to argue a quote he got in a conversation from like 4 years ago. We're over the 10-minute mark. Rob says he wants to argue the claims he made in the tweet, remember? But we are still having this conversation despite his opponent 3 different attempts to center the conversation to their previously discussed points. His opponent makes it clear for the 4th time that arguing Rob's loss from 4 years ago isn't why they met to talk. 1, I didn't lose my discussion with Destiny 4 years ago. 2nd, isn't Unholy Raft doing exactly what he's accusing me of what Joe ever accused me of? He's using loaded language. I don't like his tone. I don't like your tone. Again, he said that I misrepresent people. I said, give me proof. He said, like when you said that Destiny said that riots were the other side of the coin to voting, and that was misrepresenting him. I said, fine, let's go back and find the quote. First, he said he saw Destiny talk about it, and I misrepresented him. Then I said how. He said, well, the words I used loaded language. He didn't like the tone. And we talked about that for a couple minutes. And then he said, well, it's because you're taking him out of context. I said, well, what was the context? What was the context of Destiny saying writing's the other side of the coin to voting? What's the context? And what's Unholy Raph say about all this? The fact that I'm looking up this quote. That's clearly not what the original conversation was about. Original conversation was about Destiny embracing authoritarian type policies while calling other people authoritarians, or authoritarian positions or fascist position while calling other people fascist adjacent. We start to have that conversation. I say, Destiny has said this. He says, I don't believe you. You routinely misrepresent people. In other words, even if you show me a quote of Destiny saying that, I don't believe you. I don't believe it because you're misrepresenting him. And when I start to push back on that, Unholy Raph's argument is, you can't push back on that. It's just absolute silliness. 29:45. I kid you not. At this point, Rob's still having the meta argument about the entire conversation now. Kind of funny also that while he retells the events, he does super skim over the part where he puffs his chest about going over what he said, but he doesn't want to hang the entire conversation on this part. I don't even know what he's trying to say here. 30 minutes, 30 seconds. Going forward, I just feel it's best to recap Rob's points the same way he recaps others' points. So Rob tells us here that he's capable of criticizing Trump, and his first example is that Trump isn't deporting people for the right reasons. Actually, Rob has defended. So at 30:50, he says he's going to say this pro-January 6th thing. Number 3, I criticized heavily his meme coin shit and thought that was ridiculous and said it was he would any other country, including people in this country. So in other words, you could on campus say you hate white people and they're not going to threaten to deport you. You could say we hate Christians and they're not going to threaten to deport you. But if you say we hate Israel, they would threaten to deport you. That's number 1. Okay. Right? Number 2, you have people like Jensen, I forget his first name, but this Jensen guy that's being appointed that was absolutely terrible. It's like this pro-January 6th thing. Number 3, okay, that's the point. At 30:50, he says, actually, Rob has defended Hegseth and his team in the past. He only just recently switched because of the Signal group chat happened again. His old video of him mocking the left for it is still up. So he actually doesn't have a number 2. Did you hear what my number 2 was? That they promoted this guy Jensen inside the FBI, who was this big January 6th guy that was going after January 6th insurrectionist, blah, blah, blah. What the hell does that have to do with my comments on Pete Hegseth and Signal? Let's say I have defended Hegseth in the past. Yep. I did make fun of the left talking about Signal Chat. Yep. What does that have to do with, one of the things I criticized the Trump administration for is that they promoted this Jensen guy who was a big go after January 6th, they're all insurrectionists. They promoted him within the FBI. The FBI isn't even Hegseth's department. What does that have anything to do with anything? Now, again, allow me to stop and reframe for a minute. This Unholy Raf guy is a nobody. He won't call in. I give him the invitation. He has the invitation to call in. He could call in. He's probably not watching right now. He'll watch in retrospect and write a big, long book about this conversation, which I'm happy to do. Isn't it nice knowing that one of my haters not only is giving me free content that I could come on here and mock him for, but then he's going to spend hours of his time watching my material and then writing big books about it, and it's all bullshit that's easily debunked, right? And you can see here, well, actually, when Rob makes 6 points, his number 2 point about not liking Jensen being promoted within the FBI, he's defended Hegseth. Yep. And it's hilarious to me. I love it. Republicans won't criticize their side. There he is. There's the coward now. I'm too much of a coward to call in, but this dumb streamer's too scared to talk to me directly. Here we go. Here's the link. Call in. Here we go. He's here. Unholy Raf. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. He's here. Jack of Trades, thank you so much for the $20. Says, this is great. Not only do you get more content, seething DGG nerds are now going to flood the channel and drive up your interaction. Isn't it great? I will jump on in 30 minutes and walk you through your idiocy since you're feeling inclined to call me out again, boss. Thank you for calling me boss. Compared to you, I am certainly a boss. Fine. Your comment was made at 1:41, so we'll give you 30 minutes. We'll go through the rest of this ridiculous screed, and then you can call in and I'll prove what an idiot you are. It should be great. Ladies and gentlemen, Unholy Raft himself, give him a round of applause. Thank you so much, Unholy Raft, for finally not being a coward and calling in. We all appreciate the content that you provide.